welcome back to ETimes Lifestyle. I'm Tenzin Chudin, your host for today's live session. And like every time, yet again, I bring to you another very interesting, very exciting topic of discussion. And to do that, we'll shortly be joined by international NLP Master Practitioner, body language expert, and life coach, Pamela Puja Kirpalani. And with that introduction of our guests, surely most of you might have guessed, what the topic of discussion will be today. Yes, and it'll be about non-verbal communications and body language. And we'll explore different types of body language. We'll talk about the positives and negatives of body language, and also understand why, decoding body language is important at all. So, without giving away too much, let me just invite our guest. Hi, Pamela. Hi. How are you?
Hi, Tenzin. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Great to see you
Great
today.
having you. Yeah, nice seeing you. And welcome to ETimes Lifestyle. So glad to have you on board with us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, Pamela, let me first begin by asking, what is the role of body language? Why is understanding body language so important, and how does it benefit us?
We are hardwired to read each other's body language. So it is extremely important because we have something called, every human being has mirror neurons in their brain, which allows us to actually experience somebody else's emotion. Right. So body language plays a huge role in this. So for example, there's some research to even say that 93% of our communication with each other is in nonverbal communication. And out of that, 55% is in body language, 38% is in your voice, your tone, your pitch, your volume. And guess what that leaves us with? Just 7% in words, which is really nothing if you think about it. So it's not that your words don't have impact, but you can be 5 times more powerful if you have your body language in check. Right, so it's extremely important to know how to move and what things to do and what things not to do as well.
So, so since we know that body language is a means of to communicate non-verbally, that is, plain actions, right? So, can you tell us what all falls under body language? If I could put it another way, what are the different types of non-verbal communications?
So there's 4 types of nonverbal communication. The first one is Kinesics, which is body language, which is like how you move, Right. And then you have something which is really interesting that not many people know about. It's called Proxemics. Proxemics is the distance you have with 2 people. It's the environment that you're in. Right. And then you have touch. That's the third type of nonverbal communication. So how do you touch people? How do you react to touch? So how close do you stand to someone? How do you touch somebody? How does that interact the way you communicate with somebody else? Right. And the last one is paralanguage, which is also known as voice. Now that is really primarily about what pitch do you use? What volume do you use? What tone do you use when you're speaking to people? So those are the 4 types of nonverbal communication.
Okay. Also, could you give us some positive body language examples and some negative,
So, okay, this is something that's really interesting, especially for viewers that tend to convey discomfort in public. Right. One of the things you should really stay away from if you're uncomfortable in a conversation is putting your hand next to your neck, because this is known as a pacifying gesture. So if you do this, you're actually conveying that there's something that's bothering you, that, something is making you uncomfortable. Right. Why is that? Because our neck is actually home to a large number of nerve endings. And, when you feel uncomfortable, sometimes your face gets flushed, or, you start to feel really itchy at the collar, or you feel like, you just want to massage your neck. So men and women have different ways of displaying this discomfort. And one of the ways that men do it is so men avoid this, is they actually, scratch their neck, they'll adjust their collar, and women will usually put their hand over here. Or anytime you notice that you're talking to them normally and suddenly their hand goes up here, know that you're baselining that something has gone wrong in the conversation, that they are feeling uncomfortable about something.
And this is also the area of stress, right? Like the tension.
That's right. So, you know, you'll see men kind of massaging the back of their neck, you know, because when you massage the back of your neck, you're actually activating a nerve, which is like an acupressure point, which effectively relaxes you. So anytime you put your hand in this area, or, you know, we unconsciously, like, just, you know, if we're uncomfortable, we'll put our hand here when we're speaking, or we'll be massaging the back of our neck. That actually displays a lack of comfort. And another negative thing to do is when you're speaking to people, this is known as body pointing, always face your torso and your feet towards that other person. Because that shows interest. Besides eye contact, so level eye contact as well. So sometimes you'll see people that will be, somebody will be standing and someone will be sitting and the conversation's going place, but subconsciously there's no rapport. The rapport happens when your eye contact is level.
Interesting.
So that's extremely important for people to remember. Never be in a situation where you're looking down at someone or you're looking up at someone. Always keep it level. So even if you have kids and you want to, you know, you want to communicate with your kids or give them some advice, bend down, you know, if they're that, you know, that a particular height level. So, you know, now in terms of positive body language, what's really good is when you have an open body posture. Okay, so you're not crossing your arms, or you know, the minute people feel uncomfortable, another thing they do is they suddenly one hand goes here. So we talked about the neck earlier, right? So when people are feeling uncomfortable, you'll baseline and you'll notice that suddenly their hand goes across to pacify the other side. And why is that? Because it's almost like a hugging gesture. You see?
So you're comforting yourself.
It's a comfort. It's known as a pacifying gesture. So that's something also to look out for as well. Always keep your posture very straight, almost like a string is pulling you up. So that is really something that, you know, sometimes people who are nervous or uncomfortable, they'll tend to slouch quite a bit. The idea is to really get the person to be elongated and open, because when you take up more space in the room, you're signifying to the other person that you're comfortable and that you have authority. So that's important.
So as you said, you know, posture is also important. So what role does posture play in, you know, decoding body language and everything?
Yeah, so there's something called body lowering, and that's known as a submissive gesture. So when someone's unconsciously, when they feel less than the other person, you'll notice that somehow they're tilting forward and they're slightly lower than the other person. The idea is to always, like I said earlier, stand up straight. Imagine a string is pulling your head from the top. Not, you know, when people tell us to stand straight or to sit straight, we imagine, like, you know, flexing our back. No, you have to imagine a string pulling your head up. And that's how you get the perfect posture. Body lowering is a submissive gesture. So as much as you can, don't slouch. Keep your back very much upright and your neck also upright.
So my next question is for the working professionals, you know, who are on a job hunt and want to look presentable. So what are the tips that you could give them, you know, regarding their posture or the way they make hand gestures or when they're talking to somebody? So could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, really good question. So many things that somebody can do. The first thing is to mirror and match the other person's movements. So what does that mean? You take on the same posture and position as the other person who's interviewing you. Okay? The gestures that you use as well also should echo the other person's gestures. So if, let's say, they've got their hands up like this and they're talking to you like this, you very subtly also keep your hands up a little bit higher. It doesn't have to be an exact echo, but similar. So that's something. The other thing that you should do is, if somebody's speaking to you, what you do to convey interest and respect is to actually slightly tilt your head to 45 degrees, because when you do that, you're signifying to the other person that you're intent and you're focused on the conversation. And as they are speaking, you nod your head very gently.
the way I'm doing it right now.
Okay, good. Yes. And you will see, because of the mirror neurons in our brain, the other person will also get the signal that you're engaged, and they also will replicate and echo your body language. So that's what we call mirroring, you know, when you mirror someone's body language. And when you do this, you're conveying that you're interested and that, you know, you're listening and you're engaged. And that is one of the best ways to build rapport with somebody else, using your body language.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. So also I wanted to ask, you know, does how we dress, does that have to, you know, do something like in making a positive?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think
That's the
color
first thing we
plays
notice, you know, like
yeah. So it's a good question. You know, color plays such a big impact. You know, today I decided to wear orange for this because I know that orange conveys a sense of confidence, and it also gives people a sense of, you know, optimism and positivity. So wearing bright colors is good, but in the appropriate kind of environment. Now, there's some research to even say that purple is very hypnotic. So if you're going up on stage, or if you're doing something where, you know, you're presenting something to somebody, purple is a very hypnotic color as well. And then you have blue, which indicates that, you know, you're deep and thoughtful, and green, which means you're sensitive. So wearing colors plays a huge role as well in your dressing.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind for the next live.
Okay.
Yeah. So my next question, like since most of us have sort of you know, spent the majority of the 2 years, you know, from working from home, distant from social settings, so how do you suggest, you know, we ease down and into the formal and informal setting?
So, you know, now that everyone's off Zoom calls and meeting, you know, practice these tips. Practice the mirroring and matching. Echo the other person's body language. Because the minute you do that, you're building subconscious rapport. The mirror neurons in their brain are firing off, telling them, this person is similar to me in some way. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, now it doesn't have to be an exact replica, but if they're tilting towards the right, you also tilt towards the right. Very subtly. The more you do this, the more you practice this, believe me, it becomes super easy. You can build rapport with even a taxi driver. Okay. The second thing is what I told you earlier about nodding and tilting your head to show you're engaged. Open palm gestures are very powerful, because open palm gestures appeal to people's emotional sense. So using open palms actually appeals to what they call kinesthetic. So if you're looking to, you know, appeal to someone or to request somebody for something, try and use the open palm gestures a little bit more. Another thing that you can do to display confidence and to display a sense of authority and like, you know what you're talking about, this is called steepling. Steepling is really good if you're on a conference table. So I don't know how many of our viewers are actually on a conference table during the weekday, or even for you, Tenzin, let's say you're interviewing somebody. To convey interest and to show that you're also, you know, your material, and that, you know, you're confident about your material, you steeple like this. Steepling is, it's like this, it's this movement. Yes, but you know, very casually, almost like, you know, just letting it tilt down a little bit, your elbows on the table. So steepling is very powerful, and all the top business leaders and politicians actually steeple. You'll start noticing it now as you watch people, you know, because these are tricks that are taught to them, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you talk about celebrities now, like famous people, so you know, there are, you know, people like politicians, celebrities, they're really good at regulating their body language, you know. So because they have to stay at the top of their games, they cannot reveal their vulnerabilities, you know, there are so many things. So, and they do it quite well. So could you give us some tips and tricks, you know, how we can regulate, even though if we're nervous, anxious or anything, you know, we could, like, how could we regulate our emotions?
Okay, good question. Now, number one, because I know you wanted to ask me about how can you tell if someone is not telling the truth. You have to be careful not to look up too much when you're speaking to people, because that kind of shows that you're visually, okay, there's some research to say that if you're looking up to the left, the person opposite you is looking up to their left, that, you know, they're constructing something. So you don't want to seem like you're, you know, you have try and maintain constant level eye contact as much as you can. Another thing that you can do is, you know, please avoid anytime you notice that your hand is going up here or close to your neck. Be careful, because you're signaling to the other person that something is not right, that you're not comfortable about something. Another thing you should avoid doing is moving your torso, okay, away from, at a different angle from the person. Always have your right foot, if you're right-handed, have your right foot pointing towards that person. Subconsciously, they will pick up on the fact that you know, you're interested and you're engaged and you're actually, you know, you're not thinking of anything else. So even if you're in a group of people, you'll notice that the person who has the most authority, if you look down at everyone's feet, you'll notice that their lead foot, which is, you know, for people who are right-handed, that's their right foot. People that are left-handed, that's their left foot, but generally it's the right foot. That will be pointing towards the person who has the most authority in the room. So, and of course, we talked about the open palm gestures, and we talked about the head tilt and the nodding as well, and keeping eye level contact. So yeah, so now, definitely.
You guys go on.
Yeah, so no, definitely. Now, coming back to your question, you said, well, after like the pandemic, right? People don't know, like, you know, some people feel uncomfortable meeting face to face or in groups. These are things just to keep in mind. And this is actually what I coach my clients on as well, how to perfect their body language when they are interacting with leaders, with groups, and also just casually acquaintances, because a lot of people don't know these tools. You know, when you think about body language, you just think about eye contact, but you have to think about your whole body. Yeah. So especially the lower body.
Yeah. So as I've already asked you before, like, you know, sometimes people, they say something and their body language tells a different story, right? So while it's fine, but in people who are like emotionally distressed or something like that, you know, like what are the signs to recognize?
So if somebody's feeling emotionally distressed, you'll suddenly notice that their hand is gone up here in this region, or they're scratching their nose, or they're fiddling with their hair, or they're massaging the back of their neck, because these are all pacifying gestures. And I always tell my clients, please, whatever you do, don't scratch your nose, because you know, when you're anxious, you tend to scratch your nose. You tend to scratch, you know, your neck, or you know, you tend to massage. Those are all subconscious ways of conveying discomfort. Also, tapping of the foot is something you should also avoid doing as well, because that signals some nervous energy in the lower part of the body. And
nail biting, cheek biting.
Sorry?
Nail biting. And
nail biting, yes, nail biting, anything, any position where your hands go above, close to your neck, close to your mouth area, close to your face, avoid that. Keep your hands steepled, or you can just have them hanging loose. Yeah.
That was great, very insightful. So now I'm going to pick some questions from our viewers.
Sure.
So one of them has asked, can we change our posture permanently?
You know, I think that's more of a physiological question. Absolutely, yes. I'll tell you, there's a couple of things that have helped me shift my posture. I used to be a perpetual sloucher. And if you do certain movements and, you know, you practice Pilates, and, you know, you've got somebody who's able to fix your posture, your back, your neck, you can actually reverse whatever, you know, you have been doing in the past. And I think also when your confidence levels are high, I think that, you know, you tend to sit up a lot straighter when you feel good about yourself. So a lot of the thing about posture is it's also about what's going on inside your mind. Is something bothering you? Do you feel less than the other person? So these are things to keep in mind when it comes to posture. Yeah.
So also, like, I have certain situations in mind, you know, where you could like give a certain like the kind of behaviors that we can expect, during certain situations. So I had a couple of situations in mind, like when a person is lying, for instance, what are the behaviors that we can expect from them?
So when it comes to lying, there's a couple of things. Now, one of the first things in it's called eye accessing cues, is if you notice that the person you're speaking to, and there's quite a lot of research kind of going towards this, is looking up to their left. It's called visual construct. The chances are they could be making something up in their mind to tell you, because they're not going to the right side, which is their memory part of their brain. They're going to their left, which is the future part. So that is something that, is quite, the FBI actually look into that. They always look at the eyes. Okay. There's something known as pupil dilation. So when the eye tends to dilate, you always look out for, you can tell you won't be able to look into someone's pupils, but when they dilate, it means that there's some stimulation or excitement or nervousness. The other thing that you can also look out for is clearing of throat. Paralanguage, we talked about that earlier. That's nonverbal communication. So someone suddenly clears their throat. It doesn't mean they're lying. Now, with lying, you can't really tell if it's a single gesture. But if it's in a cluster, so if you notice that, someone's tapping their foot, or they've got their hand here, and they're looking up to their left, these are called cue clusters, and that's how you can actually get that, a much more solid view, because it's hard to really look at one and, it could be just an ad hoc kind of baseline. So what you want to do is notice a sudden change in that person's behavior. You want to notice a cue, like at least 3 gestures that display discomfort.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's about it, I think. Pamela, it was great talking to you. Such an insightful session, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to speak to you, Tenzin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you to everyone for your questions. Bye.